This is part 2 of class. Welcome. Welcome to class 2. I'm Chocolate Amun Ra, and this is a very, very interesting class because in the last couple of weeks, they've been showing videos and posts about African people in Libya. But they're not telling you the truth. Now, how did it start? Well, it's been going on for a long time. And I'm here to give you the evidence. The evidence to let you see that the government, the 54 nations in Africa, majority of them participate in the slave trade. They don't stop it. And I showed evidence in part 1. Barack Obama, signed off to open up the floodgates. Then we're going to get in part 2 why they killed Gaddafi. Gaddafi is from Libya. Here in part 2 in class, I'm going to show you the rest of 10 countries, the most afflicted here in modern times, human trade trafficking, modern slavery. 10 countries. I left off on part 1, and I'm continuing on part 2 to let you know it is big business. And maybe, just maybe, you do your research, and you're gonna learn something. And I will tell you this, you ain't gonna learn this in church. Because in church, they don't talk about things like this. And many institutions, they don't talk about things like this. Why is that? Let's get into it. Now, what I'm about to show you is in part 2 of the 10 countries most afflicted by the modern day slave trade. I showed you in part 1 of class that they have over 45 million people who's affected by the slave trade. And it's an example that you got people who works for people. They walk up and down the street and live in people's houses, but they're not getting paid. But they live in their house, cleaning their house up, taking care of their children, but sleeping in their house, eating in their house. The so-called people who's making $200,000-$300,000 a year. They get these people, they're not paying minimum wages, they just giving them small little salaries. And some of them are just living in a house. Why? Because they never had it such good, living in a beautiful home. Because in their country, they don't live like that. And it's right in your backyard. You see it every day. You choose not to acknowledge it because you think that is the norm. Excuse me. Normal mean when you see people pushing carriages. Now, what is the strange thing is if you see somebody who's Filipino pushing a white baby, has nothing to do with bigotry, has nothing to do with being a racist. It's facts. If you see a Filipino woman, she looks plain Jane, pushing a carriage. The carriage probably costs more than everything she got on. The baby looks luxurious, but she's pushing that baby. You'll find African women doing it, Jamaican women doing it, taking care of these families while the mother and the father go to work. Now, we don't know their salary. We don't know if they just living there. But the evidence that I have, that I showed you in part 1, and I'm going to continue showing you here, right now. 10 countries most afflicted by modern day slavery here, 2017. Let's get into it.
Have migrated within the country to find better opportunities, creating the ideal conditions for human trafficking. Each year, 58 million children are left behind as their parents search for work in one of China's many booming cities. And every year, up to 70,000 children fall into forced begging, illegal adoption, and sex slavery. And number 1 is India, which has by far the most victims of modern slavery. While economic growth has greatly reduced the percentage of its citizens living in poverty, the country's sheer size still results in more than 270 million Indians living on less than $2 a day. It's unsurprising then that intergenerational bonded labor, forced child labor, commercial sexual exploitation, forced begging, forced recruitment into non-state armed groups, and forced marriage all exist in India. The good news is that the government has already created many of the laws necessary to fight the epidemic, but the challenge is effectively enforcing those laws and tracking improvements and areas of continued need. On the flip side, these are the countries rated as the 10 best at fighting modern slavery. As you can see, no country has completely eradicated the problem, and leaders on this issue, like the United States, can even contribute to it by consuming products that were, at some point in their supply chain, touched by slave labor. While it can be hopeless to be a slave, the rest of us can help by raising awareness, helping an anti-slavery group, or pressuring government officials around the world to take action. Kevin Bales, a professor of contemporary slavery and the lead author of the study on which this video is based, described to NPR's Fresh Air one of the many instances where he's seen slaves being freed.
Can you share an example of where that's worked, where locals with the support of the organization have liberated slaves?
Oh, sure. I mean, I've got lots of those, in fact, but I think the one that I most find really rather thrilling myself is how in northern India, more than 10 years ago, we began to work with a local organization. Those young men who had come to freedom began to operate with our support to go into other villages where the entire village was enslaved in hereditary slavery and working in quarries. Because they were the same ethnicity, they would slip in the evenings and they would meet with people while they were having their supper, and they would say, "Oh, so who do you work for around here? Oh, you all work for the same person. Oh, you're all working in the mines. So, but where's the school? Oh, there is no school." And they'd start this Socratic dialogue that would lead in time to an awakening of an understanding of an alternative. It's important to remember that when you're in hereditary slavery, you have no notion of freedom. But when the image and truth of freedom is awakened in your mind, people really do become unstoppable. And there would become a time when those young men would say, "You know, I used to be in the same situation. I used to live in a village just like this one, but now we have a school and we even have a clinic and we have jobs and so forth." And then people would say, "How do you get there?" And then what we found there is that those villages, the women would step forward. Even though it's a very male-dominated society, the women would step forward and say, "We will lead this, even if it leads to our deaths." Because they would say, not to me, but to my women colleagues, "We don't want our daughters to be raped the way we were raped by the slaveholders, by the slave masters." And they would push that along.
You can learn more about this study through the link below, and you can help spread this video by hitting the like button and sharing it with your friends. Thanks for watching. Until next time, for TDC, I'm...
Now, I showed you this video, but you see majority in part 1. You caught the end of it here in part 2. Okay? 10 countries most afflicted by modern slavery. Now you have to watch part 1 to see basically from 10 through 9. And then of course you've seen the last one, which is India. Listen. When we're gonna stop playing emotional games and just do your research and understand? When we're going to understand modern slavery exists. Modern slavery exists. When we're going to stop playing games like it just don't happen. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You got countries that have slavery because it's big business. And when you, those who's watching my video, understand, when you sit there and say, why America doesn't do anything about it? That is Africa, the continent of Africa. They just can't walk in there and say, we're going to switch all these things around. You're dealing with political power. You're dealing with democracy. Not only just that, you also got to deal with other countries that's in there. China is in Africa. Russia is in Africa. You got different diplomatic republics that's in Africa getting resources, diamonds, human cargo, radium, gold bar. The things that you need for your batteries, for these things here, and putting in cars, and your phones. All those minerals is in Africa. The Republic of Congo, they have these things. And different parts of Africa have more resources than others. So they're going to find a way, a loophole, to try to get those resources and those minerals without having to pay millions of dollars or trillions of dollars. They got pirates. They got, you see, they got mercenary people over there. They got the Arabs over there grabbing up slaves. They're killing people like there's no tomorrow. Who's stopping it? The UN having meetings. The United Nations are having meetings. They just can't walk in here and stop it. But you got volunteer people, as you can see, I showed you in part 1, who volunteered. But they can't even do but so much. Because they're risking their lives of being killed. But let's make it real clear. Most of those people that's volunteering, you also have a journal group of people who's doing a story. So while they're there, they're filming what's going on. So in reality, they only help them but so much. Most of those people over there is journalists. Let's be honest with that. When I showed you the video in part 1, obviously they got on that boat. Obviously they really couldn't do nothing with all those people. They only do what they can because they was journalists, and so they had to do something so it can make it easier for them to be able to talk to those people. Now, I'm going to show you 5 countries with the most enslaved people. I'm going to show you this.
One would think that since slaves are no longer legally bought and sold in public auctions, there no slaves anymore. Quite the contrary, there are roughly 200 million slaves today, and you must know where they are and why they exist, with thousands of people being shipped the United States annually for forced labor and sex trafficking. Slavery doesn't just occur abroad. Amazing! It's about time we understand the world's top locations where the highest number of slaves exist today. Rank 5, the Ivory Coast. You like chocolates, don't you? What you didn't know is that the Ivory Coast accounts for 36% of the world's supply of cocoa. Needless to say, the result of this worldwide craving for chocolate is slavery. Around 250,000 children in the Ivory Coast are exploited for forced labor to harvest and process cocoa. These children do not attend school. They wake up at 8 in the morning, cut the cocoa fruit off the trees with heavy machetes, and remove the beans. Many times, they do not even have breakfast. Rank 4, Haiti. Haiti is known for forced domestic and business labor. Children in this country are called restaveks, a word that came from the French rester avec, or the one who stays with. More than 500,000 children are sent to other families in exchange of better living conditions. However, these same people who are supposed to be foster parents are the same ones who force these children into forced labor as domestic helpers or in manufacturing plants until they become adults. These children are maltreated, receive serious beatings, and they live in inhumane conditions without receiving any of the promised good life and education. Rank 3, Uzbekistan. The estimated populations of slaves in this country is 1.2 million, which is about 4% of its total population. According to Human Rights Watch, children and adults alike are forced into labor in cotton fields. These men and women are poor people who are forced by state-backed businesses to labor under extreme conditions without adequate remuneration, food, or shelter. Rank 2, India. 13 million slaves in the form of bonded labor are suffering in India. Bonded labor, also called peonage, is a modern-day form of slavery, but has been around for a long, long time. So how does bonded slavery happen? It all starts with a debt. This debt is either acquired or inherited by another slave parent. The person is now required to work without pay in exchange of paying the debt. It is during this process that the so-called employer starts adding expenses, which means more debt to the slave. This additional debt comes in the form of food, shelter, and clothing. Later on, the debt keeps on piling up and the slave cannot get out of the situation anymore. Rank 1, Afghanistan. This is the most dangerous place to be a child. Did you know that 11% of the world's population of children are forced into labor? In 2012 alone, the International Labor Organization said that there are 168 million children around the world forced into labor. What's worse is that many of these children are sold for sex. But why are children forced into labor? They are forced to work because there is a huge demand for cheap and unskilled labor. Add poverty to this equation of supply and demand, and you get the perfect recipe for slavery. Sadly, some parents actually approve of this so their children can help supplement the family income. In Afghanistan, a third of all school-aged children are forced into labor, most specifically in the carpet industry. These children are forced to work and are sexually exploited by the heartless culprits who enslave them. If this video helped to open your eyes to this issue, please consider subscribing.
I hope that you got a gods and goddesses, brothers and sisters, kings and queens, whatever you want to call yourself. I showed you evidence. Do your research. I told you. I told you. What you think you know, you don't know. Over 200 million people, slaves. 200 million. Their government ain't trying to stop that. And when you realize this, and when you understand this, it is big business. Always has, always will. Churches don't talk about this information. They don't tell you that. What they gonna say? We're gonna pray to God and let God handle this. You gonna pray to God? You gonna pray to God? Really? Think about what I just said. They're saying, let's pray to God. How many pastors and preachers, ministers went to church in Africa but didn't stay? They don't stay long. They put in a little bit of ministry work and come out of there quick, fast. Make no mistake, they gotta get permission. And you just can't walk up into any part of Africa. You just can't walk up in any part of one of those 54 nations. Trust me, death is always leaking. See, you don't want to know the truth. I told you class gonna be different this time. Because I've been watching y'all talking about Africa and showing these pictures about and talking about why nobody ain't doing nothing. Because you just watched the picture, you just looked at the picture. You didn't try to do research on the topic. You didn't want to know the topic and its end results. I told you it's going to be ugly. I told you what was going to happen. I told you that it was millions of people that are slaves. They here in America. Don't think they're not. They here in America too. Huh? You don't think so? Understand, it's always about money. It's always about money. I just showed you the evidence. Cocoa, the chocolates that you eat, the chocolates, the ice creams that you taste, all these things are a percentage. They don't want to pay the overhead, millions and trillions of dollars. So what they do is they find cheap labor. And if you already know about slavery, the whole makeup of slavery is never paying nobody anything. So all the money stays in-house. And that's how they get rich, generations after generations of being rich. Then you find out who's in power. The job that you have right now, if they really paid you what you're really worth, and everybody else, no one would be rich. The owner wouldn't be rich. They would have no money. They gotta pay you a percentage. You got to understand that. They got to make money. Revenue has to continue coming back. That's why you got problems. Now, when they show you pictures of men and women getting cut up, their backs been whipped, chopped up by machetes and knives, and some of them been shot in the head. That's because you got journalists that's there. Now with these phones, even the people who's doing the humane behavior to other people, taking pictures and things like that, showing it on Facebook. Why are you in Africa fleeing and going through Libya to try to get to Europe? Huh? Why is this? Pakistanians, the Arabs, all of them are part of it. But let's get to Gaddafi. I want to show you the video of Gaddafi. Let's get to that. Hold on.
According to some, it's about protecting civilians.
And our resolve is clear. The people of Libya must be protected.
Others say it's about oil.
The only reason they're interested with Libya is about the oil. You'd think we'd be in Iraq if the major export there was broccoli.
But some are convinced intervention in Libya is all about currency, specifically Gaddafi's plan to introduce the gold dinar, a single African currency made from gold, a true sharing of the wealth.
It's one of these things that you have to plan almost in secret, because as soon as you say you're going to change over from the dollar to something else, you're going to be targeted. There were two conferences on this, one in 96 and another one in the year 2000, called the World Mataba Conference, organized by Gaddafi. And everybody was interested. I think most countries in Africa were keen.
Gaddafi didn't give up. In the months leading up to the military intervention, he called on African and Muslim nations to join together to create this new currency that would rival the dollar and euro. They would sell oil and other resources around the world only for gold dinars. It's an idea that would shift the economic balance of the world. Countries' wealth would depend on how much gold they have, not how many dollars they trade. And Libya has 144 tons of gold. The UK has double that, but 10 times the population.
If Gaddafi had an intent to try to reprice his oil or whatever else the country was selling in the global markets and accept something else as a currency, or maybe launch a gold dinar currency, any move such as that would certainly not be welcomed by the power elite today who are responsible for controlling the world's central banks. So yes, that would certainly be something that would cause his immediate dismissal and the need for other reasons to be brought forth for removing him from power.
It's happened before. In 2000, Saddam Hussein announced Iraqi oil would be traded in euros, not dollars. Sanctions and an invasion followed. Some say because the Americans were desperate to prevent OPEC from transferring oil trading in all its member countries to the euro. A gold dinar would have had serious consequences for the world financial system, but may also have empowered the people of Africa, something black activists say the US wants to avoid at all costs.
The United States should welcome the self-determination of Africans. They certainly have denied self-determination to Africans inside the United States, so we're not surprised by anything that the United States would do to hinder self-determination of Africans on the continent.
The UK's gold is kept here in a secure vault somewhere in the depths of the Bank of England. As in most developed countries, there's not enough to go around. But that's not the case in places like Libya and many of the Gulf states. A gold dinar would have given oil-rich African and Middle Eastern countries the power to turn around to their energy-hungry customers and say, sorry, the price has gone up and we want gold. Some say the US and its NATO allies literally couldn't afford to let that happen. Laura Emmett, RT, London.
Now, you got that? Did you get that? Understand what all this is all this means. And we know Gaddafi's dead. We know that. They assassinated him. But I'll talk about that in part 3. This is class. You ain't gonna learn this in church. Modern day slavery, resources. See ya. Part 3.